Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. So today, we're going to talk about armies that need points changes. Now, points changes is an interesting topic, I think, because there's a lot of different reasons as to why it can do a good job, and there's reasons why it should not be done because it's not going to fix the problem. So to start off with, let's look at how it can't fix things. So, points costs and points changes can't fix war scrolls that are just inherently bad. If a war scroll is bad, it is better for that scroll to be rewritten than the points changed on the model and continuously dropped so that the model becomes maybe something it shouldn't be in the game. Let's look, for instance, at, say, the Sigmar from Beasts of Chaos. The Sigmar is a monster that really just doesn't have that great a war scroll. However, its points cost are continuously dropping, and what it's doing is it's now making that monster not feel like the monster it should. Now, can we get to a points value where that Sigmar is useful? Certainly. However, do we go so low that we diminish the fact that it's a monster and it becomes some random piece of chaff that you have 10 of in your army for no reason? Like, obviously, I know that 10's an exaggeration, but you get my point. What points changes can do, though, is sometimes there are models that have a decent set of rules or are within an army that is maybe tightly constricted with points. And what points changes can do then is it might allow you to bring in this extra unit over an army to balance out and really help your army. Your army might just be struggling with that one unit that has to decide between this important character and this important character to work. But maybe if everything in the army drops by 10 points, you can all of a sudden fit that second important character in and thus make your army work. There was a really great example of this working really well with Stormcast Eternals. We saw with some points changes across the board that Shootcast really started to up its level and become that next sort of level. I mean, it didn't get to top tier competitive, but it definitely had its place within the meta now, and Stormcast have generally done pretty well with their points changes recently. Plus some additional rules given to them as well. However, there is also the other aspect where maybe an army is too strong that maybe taking out one of those hammers or something in the army might pull it back and rein it that little bit in. We can look at armies that have been affected by this in the past where maybe Kharadron overlords could take too many things or other armies as such, and their points have just slightly gone up, taking out one of those things that's dealing all the damage in the army and allowing your opponents to actually stand a chance and you not have quite so many pieces to play with, thus having to play more I guess, respectively across the game. Now, what I want to look today is I want to look at armies that need points changes, and I'm going to look at them for a bunch of different reasons, so for all those that I've previously mentioned as well. So let's get cracking into this, and we're going to talk about 5 armies in particular I think can do with some points changes for a bunch of different reasons. Number 1, Ossiarch Bonereapers. Now, there is a primary reason I think Ossiarch Bonereapers deserve maybe a little bit of points drops across the board. I found that generally when playing with Ossiarch Bonereapers myself, you really do get stuck with those few extra points. Without the ability to actually have command points, and potentially not always having a heavy magic dominated force if you're not including the Gash or Arcane, you can be left with these rather large number of points at the end. You know, leaving 20 or 10 points or 30 and having that as an option is really cool and all, but maybe sometimes you're even finding that Ossiarch Bonereaper armies are maybe left with 60 points that they're really not finding a use for. I think in general Ossiarch maybe could use with that extra unit on the table, and you're not talking about like massive drops, but maybe dropping a few units here and there that to a more respectable points cost. Mostly I think the biggest thing that really is probably that little bit overcosted with Ossiarch Bonereapers is the Kavalos Death Riders. I feel just dropping the points on them maybe allows you to fit in that extra unit or take that other unit of something else, maybe another unit of Mortek Guard, another 10 models or something within the army, can really give a few more options to Ossiarch Bonereapers. When you're playing around with the list, you find yourself sort of drawn into the same sort of patterns when you're doing with Ossiarch. It's generally the same core with a couple of pieces around it. And I know there are a limited army list with different unit entries and not many of them, but I think if we get some of the points drop just that tiny bit, we can find ways to add in that extra piece, that character or that unit of Mortek or that unit of Kavalos Death Riders, etc. into the army that really allow you to sort of play with a bit of a different list. I don't think this would overly affect how well Ossiarch compete. They're definitely a good army, but they're not the best army in the game at the moment. They're definitely not where they were, say, 12 months ago. However, I think you can just sort of make them work with this and give them that little bit of extra freedom and that little bit of extra choice throughout the army. Points is definitely something that Ossiarch can fit. They've already had the rules fixed with the Petrifex Elite change, so I think just these little points changes here and there will really help them. Number 2, we have the Idoneth Deepkin. This is an army that I think has had some fantastic updates to a bunch of War Scrolls recently in Broken Realms and Marathi, and I really do think that points is now the one thing holding this back from having a ton more options in the army. We've seen the ill spam list, and that ill list for Idoneth Deepkin is an absolutely amazing list in the competitive scene. However, I would like to see the other options become viable, and this isn't because that any of the other units are bad, it's just that ills are costed so aggressively that they just overtake everything else in the book. I think your Morsar Guard potentially maybe need to go up a little bit, and maybe even drop down your Reavers and your Thralls a little bit more to sort of get them at that right sort of points level. I think the changes to the points cost of the Shark and the Eidolon and the Leviathan have all really helped, especially with the War Scroll changes to multiple of them as well over time, and maybe even seeing some of your foot characters dropped a little bit as well could really help, just give the diversity to the list option. I really like to see the Namadi list really come into its own. I don't think we have to see rules changes to the Namadi units to see them on the table. I think they do have their uses, especially if you give them the right sort of points value for their role within the army. Idoneth Deepkin can surely be fixed with points in general. Morsar Guard need to go up, other units might need to come down a little bit, and you can sort of change this to create a different balance within how the army focuses within its own internal balance to really make Idoneth Deepkin have that varied roster and varied lot of armies on the table, so we're not always seeing ill spam. Number 3, Hedonites of Slaanesh, and this is probably, I guess, the worst offender with terrible points values, and to be honest, I will say terrible points values in this list. Now, Hedonites, I feel in general, are just overcosted across the entire board. They do have, I guess, some negative parts of their book where maybe they don't have the best rules on particular War Scrolls. Slangor, I'm looking at you. However, Hedonites in general do have some decent units within there. I mean, a Keeper is decent. Yes, it's frail, but it's decent. And Demonettes are the same, and some of their newer units are also pretty good as well. However, what I feel with Hedonites is they generally are overcosted. Now, I think with Hedonites, this is maybe a issue with how the book was previously handled, and maybe Games Workshop wasn't wanting to put that same book out again, not wanting to repeat itself. Now, because this army was legitimately rather toxic when it first came out, and like to where passionate Slaanesh players didn't enjoy playing their own army. Now, that aside, the current book definitely has units that are just overcosted way too much. I think we could see points values drop massively. The summoning in Slaanesh is nowhere near as powerful as it seems. Yes, I get it's really easy to get out, however you're not likely getting out any Keepers or any Daemons until your second turn, which can be massive. I feel the summoning sort of thing within Slaanesh is an addition to the game. It's not something you should really push towards, and as such, I think the points values maybe calculating for the summoning are maybe a little bit too extreme. We could see points drops across the board and see Slaanesh really pop up much more in a competitive sense. I think that's generally the way to go. You can see almost every unit in the book drop at least 10 to 20 points, if not more in many different circumstances. Number 4, Daughters of Khaine. Now, this is the interesting part. The book that came out alongside the previously talked about Slaanesh that we just did is generally, I think, undercosted. Now, there were a lot of points drop across the board for Daughters of Khaine, and many which I don't think actually needed to happen. I really don't think we needed to see the points drops in many of the different shrine variations, though maybe the Bloodwrack Shrine was a welcome point change, but maybe it could still go back up a little bit further than what it currently is. I think Daughters of Khaine are definitely a fantastic army, and maybe some of their key pieces are a little bit undercosted, and they're just getting that extra unit on the table they maybe shouldn't be getting. There were some good changes in the current Daughters of Khaine book. Taking away the Horde discount from Witch Elves was really cool. I feel this is a positive change, and we should see these more elite units taken up and getting rid of points discounts on them for Horde bonuses if they're not actually a unit that should be run in a Horde. However, that aside, I think the shrines for me are the big kicker here that definitely need to go up in points for the army. I think this would create a much fairer sort of list for the Daughters of Khaine, but in return, there's probably some units that maybe could come down in return to sort of balance it out. The Snake list is good, but it's definitely not the be-all and end-all list, I think. We saw some points drops on that, and sort of saw some points hikes on the cauldrons and stuff that run alongside Witch Elf and Sister Slaughter Blobs. We might see some variation in our list that actually do a much more competitive sense. That's not to say anything in Daughters of Khaine is not competitive, because it all is, but maybe we could bring that balance a little bit more. I think Daughters of Khaine are at that point where they're so close to being a perfect army book that just a few little points changes can really make them and just set that bar for what a good book is. I feel there's no book better out there that has everything so close to being utterly perfect than Daughters. They just need that slight little touch to really make them see. And number 5, we have Seraphon. Now, I will say for Seraphon, I do not think they're out of whack as badly as people think. I think the non-aggressive Seraphon lists are actually quite fine. I really enjoy playing against things like Thunder Lizards and the more Saurus-heavy armies where I feel they're actually at a good position. I think there are definitely, though, in Seraphon some really strong outliers that really ruin the book. Ruin is strong, that really sort of put the book out of whack would be a better way to put it. Ruin is a strong word. So with Seraphon, I feel these outliers, if they're brought back in, and they can be with points, because I don't think any rules on any of them are particularly offensive in comparison to a lot of the game. I mean, even Croak himself, I don't particularly not like playing against Croak. I just feel he should be a lot more points than he currently is. So for me, it's that sort of thing. It's how they sort of hiked up the points on Salamanders, and maybe even bringing Skinks points up, or potentially removing a battle line option. Fixing those pitched battle profiles, I think, can really make some of these lists a lot more bearable. There's potential in like how you can do this as well, and I talk about pitched battle profiles because that's how you adjust points as well. So that's an interesting thing to talk about. Pitched battle profiles are obviously where you see the points and the battlefield roll. So what you can do when you up points is you can also change battlefield roll and unit sizes. We saw this with Storm Fiends for Skaven, where maybe 9 Storm Fiends was becoming a bit of an offensive unit in the game, and they brought the cap back down to 6 Storm Fiends as a maximum unit size. You might be able to do this with particular things in Seraphon to stop them being so aggressive. Maybe bringing Salamander's unit size down is a way to sort of curb them, and because that would allow less of them to fit in the army because they are an artillery choice. So if you drop them down and you drop the unit size, kept the points at the same value, it would really sort of curb that effect that Salamanders have. Croak, obviously, we talked about him. He's definitely just too cheap. There's no doubt about it. And Skinks, maybe it's the ability of... We can look at something like Lumineth Realm Lords, where they require a unit of Venari Orlin Wardens on the table in your list to unlock another unit. Maybe you have to have a unit of Saurus to unlock a unit of Skinks as battle line. Potentially a way to look at it. Seraphon aren't a bad book, or at least aren't as bad as everyone thinks, I feel, but they could definitely use with a bit of fine tuning to bring them back down and in line with a lot of the game. So that's my list of 5 different armies that can be helped with points changes in big ways. And I'd like to say I've picked a variety of different armies. I didn't necessarily pick ones that needed the most point changes, but I tried to show you how points can change in a lot of different ways. Where we talked about some on how like the pitch battle profiles can be changed rather than points, because that is part of the same changing process, or rather those that just need that fine tuning in there as well, to those that just outright need massive drops across the board. I try to show a variety of different things and how points can help in different ways. It should be noted that points aren't always the answer. I stated this at the start of the video and I cannot iterate it enough. Sometimes things just need War Scroll rewrites, or the army book just needs an update. That is just sometimes the case. But I'd like to hear people's thoughts on armies they would like to see just have a few points changes, or in particular units you'd like to see just have that bit of a points change to really help them and make them that little bit more appealing to you when writing your army list. I'd like to know what you think is out of whack and what you think is maybe too undercosted, overcosted, etc. Let us know. And also, are there any pitch battle profiles like unit sizes or battlefield roles you'd like to see changed on units as well? Because I feel that is a part of the game connected to points when we change things. Let us know in the comments below. Well, thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, you can do so by coming and joining our Discord server, which you'll find a link to in the description of the video. While you're on YouTube as well, go check out my featured channel section, which contains a bunch of other fantastic Age of Sigmar content creators doing everything from battle reports, tactical videos, lore videos, painting tutorials, and more besides that. Lastly though, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you to James, AJC, JC, Christian Weir, Soren, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Chaos Spawn, James Crowder and Andrew Bowen. Thank you all so much for your support. And if you'd like to help support the channel like these fine people do, you can do so by clicking once again on the links down in the description of the video to either YouTube members or Patreon. Thank you all for supporting the channel though, watching the content. Have a nice day, stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.